They got a Rolls Royce, bro. Yo, the kids on Rolls Royce. Yo, look at this shit. Oh my God. Wow. Yo. Holy shit. New York sports club files for bankruptcy as gym businesses collapses, as gym businesses collapse. And I've recently had the opportunity to go back to the gym last week. I go here to there's a gym local by me, Crunch Fitness, that I go to. There's a New York sports club that's down the block from me. And then over here, I forget what the other gyms are. A couple of gyms that are in the area. But as you can see, it says gym chain New York Sport Club has filed for bankruptcy. Sign of the toll pandemic has taken on the business. More and more people work at home, mostly for safety. It says, well, this has helped companies like Peloton Interactive, which makes bikes for personal use. It means public gyms have become a wasteland. Gyms are like restaurants because both face social distancing measures that are nearly impossible to put into place without reducing the number of people who can be in a space by 3/4. Gym equipment also needs to be cleaned after each use, a labor-intensive process. It says, while restaurants have gotten a modest reprieve due to warm weather that allows outdoor dining, that will change as the season changes, particularly in the northern tier of the states. Many restaurateurs say that the return to indoor dining with social distancing will ruin their prospects. The gym news shows that parts of the economy cannot rebound as long as there is a pandemic. Many gyms will never reopen because they do not have the capital to ride out what may be months before they can fully reopen. COVID-19's world-changing effects will crater another industry. Now, you've seen the stock for Peloton. Peloton has ripped up from the beginning of the pandemic. The stock was as low as $20, and if you've been riding it out, the stock's currently at $82 now. And of course, unfortunately I didn't buy Peloton, but in any event, it's sad to see, because of what's going on with COVID, with the virus, that more and more businesses. There were quite a few restaurants in my neighborhood here in Manhattan that have shut down because of not being able to afford to basically stay closed for so many months prior to people basically coming back. We see a lot, especially where I live, is literally just bars and restaurants all the way up 2nd Avenue, 1st Avenue, 3rd Avenue. It's all bars and restaurants, and it's hard to social distance, at least if that's what their goal is, to have people social distance. They've had issues with Governor Cuomo putting in these ridiculous rules that, it has to be a certain type of menu.
Taking a creative and sometimes comical approach to the new state mandates. New guidelines set by Governor Cuomo has left restaurant owners scrambling to comply. The big change? No serving alcohol without also serving food. And the food must be of a sufficient serving size for everyone in the party.
It's really a challenge for our staff to keep up to speed on what you can do and what you can't do, but it's also a challenge for our customers, right? And so, I empathize for our customers because they're learning the new rules. I definitely empathize with our employees because, we're retraining them every couple hours.
One upstate lawmaker says he plans to challenge the rules in court, calling the governor's move an egregious overreach of power.
For you to be considered to reopen, literally killing the state in terms of tax revenue. And then you have guys like de Blasio that are just like completely inept, have no idea what they're talking about, saying things like, we don't need to worry about rich people moving out of the area. It's like, who cares if we lose 50% of our tax revenue? Who cares? We don't even need it. We'll just print it out, right? We'll just complain to the government about them printing money, and then when we can't afford to pay taxes, we'll just lay everybody off and then hope for the government to print us some money. And you just really see the stupidity of what's going on. The irony is that the neighborhood that where I live, it's predominantly white. It's like overwhelmingly white in this neighborhood. But when I take the bus, the express bus uptown to go to work to the hospital, the neighborhood, of course, the demographic changes. Once you start to go further uptown, it becomes like, so you hit like Spanish Harlem, then regular Harlem once you're in the 120s. And then once you get into like the 140s, it becomes much more of a Hispanic neighborhood. And when you look uptown, when I take the bus going uptown, like almost nobody wears a mask. There's very few people that wear a mask. In terms of social distancing, it really doesn't exist uptown. Like in Washington Heights, you'll see large scores of people hanging out at the parks, playing baseball, basketball. You go uptown, all the basketball courts and the projects up there are all full with lots of people. Nobody wears a mask. Yet the government, of course, here is still requiring people to wear a mask. The result of this is job loss, right? The result of this is job loss. And for those who haven't seen, not too long ago, what New York City looks like, there's huge amounts of crime that's taking place in NYC. Just recently, there's been, of course, numerous shooting, and people always saying that they need to look out for different types of groups, but not too far here in Harlem, there's been just literally one shooting after another.
Literally now to the point where they're taking matters into their own hands. And Dan, I just got off with the phone with police, and they tell me the 17-year-old who was here at the George Washington houses overnight and shot in the head has now died. The suspects got out of the car here on 2nd Avenue and then blasted the victim right here on the sidewalk. You can see the evidence markers documenting where those bullets are here on the sidewalk. This says the mayor and the police commissioner now being scrutinized after disbanding an anti-crime unit taking guns off the street, which is followed by a spike in gun violence.
18 people blasted by bullets in New York City in just 24 hours. The latest before midnight today, a 17-year-old boy at the George Washington houses shot in the head in East Harlem. Hours earlier in Canarsie, Brooklyn, 5 people in 3 separate shootings were wounded in broad daylight.
Left and right, openly in the daytime. Like, I'm not even talking about under the cover of night. I just mean literally walking up to you and shooting you dead in the face in the middle of broad daylight. People shooting at cars in the middle of broad daylight. Nighttime robberies here that have been happening in the city, where literally looters robbing looters here in NYC. And this is the unfortunate reality of a fake pandemic. Like I've said numerous times, I haven't seen a someone who's strictly in the hospital for the disease in question in several months. And even when we did have those types of patients were typically very old, with a laundry list of comorbidities, typically obese. I would probably say like half of the patients that I typically see are like 250 and up. Right? Most of the patients that we take care of, like in a medical step down, are typically morbidly obese, minority patients. And of course, the demographic is predominantly minority, Black, Hispanic. And this is typically what we see, even among the actual nurses, even among the staff. There are numerous staff members. This is a huge problem that we have both in healthcare. It's hard to be a healthcare practitioner and teach people about health when you yourself are morbidly obese. I'm not talking about people that are just like slightly overweight. I myself am slightly overweight. I could stand to lose a good 20 pounds, which is why I'm thankful to be able to go back to the gym. I don't really have the knees anymore for going out and running. So I can do most of my weight loss either here at home with cardio or hitting the gym and doing some lifting. But unfortunately, I see a lot of my colleagues, primarily, of course, it is primarily female dominant, that are just literally morbidly obese. I'm talking like well over 70, 100 plus pounds overweight. And it's very hard for people to take you seriously and to say, well, why should I change the way I live my life when you literally look just as bad as I do? You look like you should be in the bed right next to me. And this, of course, is the state of America, where unfortunately there's a lot of people who are obese. And so what we see is, because of poor leadership here in New York, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs, and it's only going to revolve and end up in more violence with basically here in the state. It's a very sad state of affairs that we're dealing with here in New York. I would probably move if I didn't have a family here that I would have to look in on. it kind of is what it is for the time being. We'll have to wait and see. But of course, like I said, my goal is, of course, to get out of the country and live abroad within the next, let's say, like 5 years or so, maybe 5 to 7 years. At most, my goal is to live outside of the city. But over the long period, I really don't see New York changing all that much, especially because I believe they've lost about 50 or 60% of their tax revenue. Many of these individuals have up and left New York City, and the only thing that they're going to do is either cut services. It's going to revolve around more crime, which will mean less police, especially in light of what's going on, now with the police. I really don't think that it's going to change all that much with the president. People say that it may go away. I really don't think so, because it's primarily revolved around the cities. If the cities are Democratic, typically Democrats will let their communities, they'll let their cities go to shit, just out of principle, just out of spite, while of course at the same time maintaining comfort with private security, while the average citizen, of course, has to fear for their life. Kind of is what it is. Like I said, America, for if you're a guy out there and you're young, you put in your work, you save up your money, you invest, and then buy real estate abroad. America, not really the place, especially if you want to have a family. You see what's going on with the family court. I mean, there's a whole array of things that are going on within the country that you can stay here, utilize it for what it is. Good place to work. You can earn a side of living. But then once you want to do other things that revolve around stability, like having a family, raising children, etc., America is not the place for that. Especially not here in New York with the rising crime. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it here. Very sad state of affairs. I used to go to New York Sports Club a couple of years back. So really nice gym. Really sad to see that they're going through bankruptcy. And this is primarily, I wonder if my gym is actually going to go through this exact same thing, because of course you have to require masks and cleaning down, limited amount of people that are allowed in the gym, etc. Just real stupidity that's going on within the state.